Cassette Podcast Network.
Well, we are excited to be here today with Jed, a fire captain, and Jen, an ER physician. And so two first responders and family members really together. So it's going to be a really fun conversation today. Excited to have you guys. Welcome.
Thank you.
So as we get started, we're curious, what are the major stressors that your family faces that maybe non-first responder families may or may not have to deal with?
I think one of the big ones is lack of consistency on the schedule, especially on the fire side. Working a 48-96 or 2 days on, 4 days off. I'm gone from the house 3 days a week. So I'm always bouncing back and forth between work and home routine. And the kids have adapted really well, but we've made it so that they have no change in their routine, no matter who's here, whether it's my wife or I or the nanny. So, but that is always a struggle to balance, making sure everybody's there and everybody's getting what they need.
And the changing in schedules, because sometimes he doesn't come home when he is supposed to because he gets forced to stay because of short staffing, or he gets sent out on a fire and he's gone for days on end. And sometimes my schedule, I don't always get off when I'm supposed to. And sometimes I have to go in when someone else needs a shift covered. So it's just a matter of kind of trying to fill in the blanks, but try to keep it as consistent for the kids as possible.
And so I'm curious, you talked about the shift work and being on call. How does that impact the day-to-day family life? You said you try to keep it consistent for the kids, but what does that look like for you all?
Every day, no matter who's here, they have the set like times. Like this time when they get up, the time when we have breakfast, go to school. And I think that the biggest helpful thing for our older kids, which are 9 and 6, is we have a calendar posted in the kitchen, and they can see when mom and dad are working, and they can also see when their stuff's coming up, karate or t-ball or soccer or whatever it is, and they know their schedule. But we make a very big effort to make sure that the stuff always happens. We always try to have dinner at the same time every night, whether I'm not home or whether my wife Jen's not home. We always try to make that consistent so that they have that. I guess it's comforting to them at that age to know that they're going to get the same thing every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've heard a lot about the importance of consistency from Dr. Trudy and routine, and then communicating with the family and the importance. So I love this idea of the calendar, and the kids, can always check and see where is mom or dad today, and that just reinforces the importance of that.
I think they've also gotten a habit of, or we have, at night when we're saying goodnight or kissing goodnight, we normally, without fail, 1 or 2 or 3 of them always ask, like, who's going to be here in the morning or what are we doing tomorrow? And so when they go to bed, they kind of know mommy's going to work in the middle of the night, daddy will be here, mommy's going to work in the middle of the night, Miss Cassie will be here, or daddy comes home tomorrow, or that kind of thing. So we tend to inadvertently, definitely not intentionally, but close out our day as they're going to sleep, kind of so they know what to expect the next day. And I've noticed that more in like the last year or so, and I don't know if it's just age appropriate. And our 3-year-old actually probably asks more than any of them. She likes to just ask at night what the plan is for the next day, but it seems to help her.
And then as far as routine and consistency, technology has just really helped with that, and in particular FaceTime. Being able to put a face with a voice, and the kids really, even if it's 2 minutes of me talking to them and them being able to see my face, that really adds to their day. Like it gives them that comfort, that feeling that I'm there still, as opposed but I'm at work.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I can't imagine trying to navigate that. We have enough time getting kids to soccer practice. I can't imagine navigating who's working and when they're going to work and all of that. What are some of the difficulties, not just in the technicalities of the schedule, but for you all? Like, is it difficult when you're gone for 3 days with the family? Or, there's obviously the schedule is one thing, but how do you deal with being gone? Or how do you help the kids cope when maybe they're having a hard time if dad's gone or mom's gone?
I think that, like you said, technology and FaceTime, if one of the kids wants to talk to him, then they can call. And we know that if he doesn't answer, that's it. And we don't call back until he can call us because it means that he's busy. But they are getting old enough now that if they want to talk to him, we say, okay, to give him a call, see if you can do that.
I mean, as far as balance, like it has become difficult at times for me because my priorities and my balance at work are completely different from what my priorities and my balance is at home. And the second I walk in the door from 2 days at work, I have to change roles. Like I'm not fire captain anymore. We're not responding to emergencies, and the requirements for me or the needs for me for the family are completely different. So that at times can become difficult. And we worked through that. I mean, and I think just having that schedule, knowing I can look the night before when I come home, okay, what do we have going on today? And then, making time for yourself, i.e. like getting, even if it's 30-minute workout in, like totally helps, like just to ease your mind and give you something to focus on without diving back into the day-to-day routine.
We've had we've had to learn how, I do things a certain way and he does things a certain way, and it's not always the same way. And I think that's totally normal in a relationship or in a family. But sometimes I get used to doing things the way I do it, and the kids get used to doing things the way I expect it to be done. And then when he's gone, then he comes home and you kind of shift gears because sometimes he expects it a little bit different, or he anticipates needs differently, or responds to questions they ask different than I would have. But you have to be just as supportive because his no needs to be as important as my no. But just, well, mom would have said this, and not always the case. So we try really hard to be on the same page. Yeah. But it's hard sometimes when even I am caught off guard because he would have handled something differently. Just as if when I'm gone, or I work a bunch of mornings in a row and he's done mornings, and he does it one way and I come home and mix it up and do it a different way. So that is hard, and it's an ever work in progress.
That's more on us though.
Yeah, we've had to work on being on the same page and being the team and supporting one another and not letting them play us.
What are some of the communication strategies that you guys use to navigate those waters?
That's changed over the years too, trying to just speak kind of kindly and addressing it or to each other. But more than that, it's trying to set time aside to discuss what's going to happen or anticipate needs before they happen so that we can kind of be on the same page. And that's impossible to do all the time, but we try to anticipate needs of the kids or of each other so that we can be more united when things happen. But that's not always the case. And sometimes it's kind of like in the moment, we need a minute, guys, while we figure it out before we can tell you how we're doing it.
And if you're frustrated, we found that it's best to not hang on to it and to address it at the most convenient time, but not hang on to it for a long time because it just grows legs, and it's easier to address it right out of the gate than it is to do it 2-3 weeks down the road.
I think that's one of the things we've heard a lot from families and Dr. Trudy is how important communication is, but not just about, like you said, the schedules, but also like that transition when you come home, or the transition of different parenting styles and all that. So there's more of a need for constant communication about kind of what's going on, and just because things are so different, I can imagine how difficult that is to figure it out.
Absolutely. I think we'd like to think that everything just ebbs and flows and goes together in a day, but it doesn't most days, I think. But being able to say, he's really good at saying, like, if I'm in the middle of something or he comes in more like, what do you need from me right now? Rather than him just starting to do what he thinks we need and then me doing what we think. And vice versa. If I come in or he's working on something that he started, I say, what do you need from me right now? Rather than trying to just guess and then kind of stumbling over each other. But we've had to learn that.
Yeah, that's definitely didn't come naturally.
May have been a couple bumps along the road to get there. I'm curious while we're talking about communication, you both work in these frontline roles. So, how do you communicate about work? Like, do you guys give each other the nitty gritty details of what happened? Do what does that look like for you all?
I think sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. If one of us needs to talk, the other one is just there to listen, and we can go as in depth as we need to. And sometimes it's just more of the same for the both of us, and so we don't have to. I don't know if that makes any sense, but needs to. I listen, and he can go as deep as he wants or nitty gritty as he wants. But sometimes, like, how are you? Busy, not this or that. And because we almost know the ins and outs of each other's, then we almost don't have to talk about it as much.
We are lucky in the respect that, like, I was a paramedic before I was a fire captain, and both of us understand the stuff that we see and the stuff that we do. And so if I do say something or mention something to her, she immediately understands it. She doesn't have to ask questions and can easily listen and actually and understand the situation. Whereas I do have guys at work that their wives don't do any type of EMS or fire or anything. And it's difficult at times for them to, one, they don't feel that they should share the stuff that they see or do because, their wives have never been exposed to that and they feel they just shelter them. And then two, they don't get the understanding. Like, you can actually generally see when somebody truly understands what you're talking about as opposed to just like getting it off your chest. Mm-hmm. So that is a nice aspect, but we're just lucky in that regard.
And to kind of stick it with the same thing, and I'm just curious because we've talked a lot about fear of safety for families of first responders, right? And I mean, you were both in, especially this last year with COVID, and I mean, it up in Northern Nevada, we're not strangers to fires, so right, we have a lot of like dangerous in both of your jobs, right? And so do you struggle with the fear for kind of each other's safety, or is it because you manage your own that it's easy to manage kind of that fear for your spouse?
I think that I have less risk than he does, and so I don't know if he worries about me at all the same way. I absolutely worry, or think about it, but I have to, this far in with this many more years to go, I have to trust the process and just know that for the most part, yes, awful tragedies happen, but for the most part, these guys are safe no matter what they're doing, rescuing fires, medical calls, and I just have to trust the process that he's with other people that will take care of him as he would take care of them in addition to who they're serving. And if something happens, by all means, I can't imagine, and I've thought of the worst, but I just have to believe that maybe it won't. And if it does, then we'll address it at that time. The hardest part, I think, is when there are things local and you kind of want to be with your family and you can't because you have to be with your community, whether these fires this past fall or with this pandemic. A lot of people were holed up at home and we had to keep leaving every day. But it's what we meant to do, or it's what we are doing and we intentionally signed up for. So I have to trust the process. It's the only way I can get through it.
This year was the first time ever that I actually worried about her at work because of the fact, we were all exposed to COVID on a regular basis, but the hospital was definitely the hub of the patients coming there, and she was definitely exposed to true COVID, like on a consistent basis. And I think that was definitely, wasn't unnerving, but worrisome at times because nobody knew what was going to exactly happen. And we definitely took all the precautions and stuff, but it was still unnerving for me, even though I was doing the exact same thing.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what we've heard from some of the folks in the hospital staff and even with spouses and fire or in police services, just that new level of worry this year with COVID was something that they had to employ some new skills. So how do you deal with that? Like, what are some self-care techniques or ways that you deal with, the stress or the fear that may come up?
Well, I think the first thing for us is, putting rationalizing exactly what we're doing, like being very true and gathering the facts, like what is actually are we dealing with. As the information would come out, we would actually just sit down and kind of break it down and discuss it and make sure that both of us were on the same page, and then talk about what precautions we could put in place, i.e. for our family and when we're at work. And both of us reviewed the policies and procedures our places of work put into place, and made sure that we were being safe at work and at home. And I think that we were on the same page, that gave both of us a sense of a little bit calmness about the whole process, and we just started going through it, and we changed as we needed to. I mean, from like her coming home and immediately showering and changing out of her scrubs and all her stuff at work, and not bringing it into the house, and then me utilizing all the precautions we had at work. So
I think, I don't know if you guys have found this, but I would anticipate that a lot of frontline workers probably aren't very good at self-care because you're so used to caring for others. I never thought of it like that, but I doubt it. Neither of us are very good at it. And then I think in a time of a pandemic, when everything that has changed at work and home, there really was no time for that. But in a way, having a little bit of time last year to be at home, and everybody was just home when we came home and had some time to get outside and really was probably able to decompress more during the spring and summer last year than on a regular basis, because you get done with work or you walk in the door and you go, go, go. And last year we were going to, a place where you didn't always know what was going to happen COVID wise, but you got to come home and everybody was here and you didn't have any place to rush off to. And you could go outside, you could go for walks and go for bike rides. It actually, in a way, worked out pretty well to slow down after having so much stress of being at work and dealing with the unknown. Otherwise, I wouldn't say we're very good at self-care, but we are working on it. I promise.
Well, it sounds like you are, because the thing that comes up a lot is the mindset, right? Having that mindset of control what you can, and also like taking advantage of the time you have. And so a lot of the things that Dr. Trudy's talked about, I mean, you guys have brought up already. So I think you're better at it than you think, is what I'm saying. You hit a lot of the tips. You're doing good. But I just think that's such an interesting part of how, I don't know, this for the way the shutdown and COVID was affected a lot of people negatively. For those that were still on the front lines, it was almost like a necessary like pause and kind of, like you said, like a decompression, and really helped with everything else that was going on.
I felt that way. I'm sure everyone, if anything, I think everybody I've talked to has had a different experience through this past year, that's for sure. But we came out ahead. I think a lot of us did.
Jed, you were talking earlier about the challenge in that transition time from going, from being Jed, fire captain, to walking in the door and dad and everything that goes along with being dad and husband. How do you do that transition? Like, what strategies do you use to kind of decompress and to put on that next hat, and vice versa when you go to work?
So I've been really mindful. I have like a routine on my way to work. I listen to music and think about all the things that I'm gonna have to do for the day. It's the same on the way home. I listen to music, try to just calm down. But the night before, I always try to look at my calendar and review what we have coming up as for the day. And then I just put that in my mind and come up with and have a plan for the day. Whether that means, okay, I have some free time right when I get off, so I'm going to make sure I get a workout in, and then, or I'm going to take our littlest to gymnastics, or we're going to pick up the kids and we have all this other stuff to do. Knowing, having that schedule for me is comforting. I'm a big like schedule follower person, and just winging it doesn't work for me. And so if I know exactly what we have coming up, then I can tackle the day. for a while there, I had a hard time, because I'm fire captain, I'm in charge, running all this stuff at the fire station. But when I come home, I'm not dealing with firemen. I'm dealing with my kids and my wife, and so it's more of a team effort at home. And
he's not in charge.
it's shifting that instead of asking, what do you need? I do that with my guys. I ask them what they need every day, but at the same time, it's a little different at home because things do change and what is the priority? And if I've been gone for quite a while, that seems to work the best. What do you need?
I'm curious also about the impact of stress. So you both have very stressful jobs. And so what is the impact of stress on yourself as well as your family?
I think the big one for me is sleep. I don't sleep well. I don't sleep well at work. And it's hit or miss whether I sleep well at home. And I think that's very common across the board for guys at my fire department, and pretty much every fire department, because you're kind of in a state of readiness, even though you think that you're sleeping well, you might not be. And it's funny, so I wear my watch that tracks my sleep at work, and I'll get like maybe 30 minutes of REM sleep a night. The rest I'm fairly active. I think that's probably the biggest impact as far as stress, and half the time you don't even know that you are stressed. Really, I think your body is coping with it, but you actually are a little more than usual.
Yeah, I just think about you're always in fight or flight response. Your body's always in that stress response, and so that signaling that okay, it's okay to relax, and sometimes that button doesn't get turned on.
Yeah,
him for sure, for them for sure.
Jen, how about you? What's the impact of stress on you from your job?
I must be, he tells me this a lot, I must be in denial because I don't feel stressed on a regular basis at all. I think I have a high stress job, but I've been doing it for so long and I'm used to it that I don't feel overwhelming stress very often. And I don't know if I'm lucky enough to just be able to move through it. I definitely compartmentalize, and I've learned that over the years, but I can just leave it in a box and move on, and sometimes revisit it and sometimes not. And I don't know, that that's forever healthy, but it works. And I'm also lucky though that I go and I come home and I work the whole time, but I just don't have this constant what if next like they do. I say all the time, like, I have controlled chaos, they have chaos, and I can't imagine doing what the true frontline or true first responders do. It's a completely different mindset, and so I think I would feel completely differently if I was in their shoes. But I trained for a long time to do exactly what I do, so I feel like I'm prepared to do my job, and then I get to leave and come home and go about my normal schedule. I do once in a while just need some downtime, and I go, and sometimes I just need a day to do not very much, and then I'm ready to go again for a while. But I think that's really the extent of how I feel, but sometimes I just need to be done.
You mentioned that self-care, as a care provider, you give so much to others, but taking time for self-care is challenging. What are some of the barriers to self-care for you?
For us, I think the biggest one is probably just the kids. We still have a toddler that's home with us most of the time. As she does more and more school days in preschool, we will do better and better because we were at that point before she was born with our older ones. And then we are lucky to get weekdays off. So we get days off together sometimes. We get days off alone with nobody else at home. And as our littlest gets older, we're getting more and more of that. And so for me, it's definitely getting in a workout, getting to the gym, and seeing my girlfriends. Now that we're coming back out of this pandemic, I like to have lunch or go for hikes and have friends around me. And that's important to me. And now we're able to get closer and closer to that again. You too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just making the time.
Yeah,
he's not as good about going and doing stuff for himself. He likes the workouts, but I have to urge him. And we do. Sometimes we just schedule it on the calendar that he loves because he's not. If I say, why don't you go ride your bike? He's like, it's not on the calendar. If I put that mountain bike ride, then he'll go.
I love that.
And then he enjoys it. But he also tries to be very available for the family because he feels guilty, I think, that he's gone. And so it's hard for him to take more time away, but finding that that's important too.
And I wonder that often if, the time away, then it's like, well, there's no time to take time for me. Like now I've got to be with my family. And so that rub there.
Yeah, it's definitely a, I guess you call it an internal struggle that I have because I do feel that way, and it's taken me a while to get to that point that, I do need to do something for myself. For whatever reason, I don't understand why I get relaxation and fun about, or feel better about like washing my truck or doing yard work. But I don't know. Some people do. Some people don't. But that's my little outlet.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the other things we've talked a lot about on this podcast is finding what works for you. What are the ways that you decompress? And if it's washing your truck, awesome. Like,
yeah,
you've got a very clean truck. You can come wash my car anytime you like, because that is not my experience.
The days that I say that sometimes I just need a few hours or half a day to do nothing, I mean do nothing. For him, when he says I need a day or a half a day to myself, it's like task. But the house and the yard and the cars look great, so I can't complain. And it's therapeutic for him, so we let it happen.
That's awesome.
All of that. I have a question that's more, because this has just come up a lot with some of the families we've talked about and with Dr. Trudy around news and just kind of how you engage with the news, especially with this last year with COVID and how everything's just, I mean, in both of your jobs, there's a lot that goes on with, obviously with the news. And how do you have a way to like process the news, or is it something that you guys even engage in really with kind of engaging in, the news or what's going on?
I don't routinely follow national news. I rely on like Twitter and the local like RTJ and News Channel 8 apps, and they alert you if something big is going on, and if you feel that that's gonna you're interested in it and you want to look at it, I look at it. Other than that, I don't let it consume my day, because it could. Like you could literally sit there and listen to them moderate it all day long, and I think that's an added stressor because you have no control over it. Like there's literally no control over what they're saying. But I do try to keep on local issues. I think that's more important than anything, is just being aware of what's going on in your community, especially on my side, because like we are out there in the community, and routinely we do get asked by citizens like, well, what do you think about this, or what do you think about that? And I think it is our job to kind of know about what's going on and maybe not give your opinion, but like validate their concerns.
I watch far less news than he does. I go to him when I need something clarified. And it's not just, I don't feel like it's just local. He knows current affairs globally, I think, far more than me. Sometimes I feel like we're living it, and I feel like the news is so negative that I just don't want more of that. And so I don't watch a lot of it. And when we're home, we don't watch a lot of TV. So news in general, I try not to be ignorant of the facts, but I try to go for the facts that I'm looking for and know the truth and know science across the board and kind of just go like that. I can't get caught up in the everyday and the every different way they're trying to say the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Jen, have you felt the stigma? So some of the healthcare workers have talked about feeling more of a stigma now, especially with the pandemic, like people being afraid because you work in a healthcare industry, but also I think one of the nurses we had the other day said if people tell her that she's lying and different things like that. So have you felt kind of the backlash of the stigma this last year?
Sure. I think there's always been different different times for different stigmas, and we've always been amongst some of it, including anti-vaxxers and different flus and pandemics previously. And again, I believe in science. I'm a scientist really at heart, and I trust the process. I mean, I think eventually there's proof in what works and what saves lives, and I try to just stay on that side of it. And I know there will always be naysayers, and occasionally you can change someone's mind, and for the most part people have to make up their own mind, but that's their right. And so I just try to trust the process and know that what I'm doing is scientifically proven, and we will help the people that believe in that.
That's good.
Jed, you mentioned community a couple of times. I'm curious, like, is community, being a part of the community, like how, it sounds like that's a huge value for you in showing up for the community.
Yeah. I don't want to like say this wrong, but everybody trusts firemen. We have a really long history of, if you call and there's a problem, we're going to show up and we're going to fix it. And we see people in their worst times. They trust us with their family members. They trust us with their most prized possessions and belongings. And that is something I never want to see, that trust ever broken. And I think by, like, especially working in Incline Village, especially this last year, we've had a lot of people move to town. The town is like bursting at the seams with people. And through the entire thing, our service delivery never stopped. Like, we don't, there's not an option to stop. People continue to call. We keep showing up and doing what we're supposed to do. And being at the place that I've been for such a long time, like, you do have a sense of ownership to that place and community, and in the greater Reno Tahoe area. But we come down here and help out a lot. And we live here, and so you definitely have that wanting to always make it better and be a big part of it. However you can. So I think that's kind of how I view it.
And if maybe I could add, we're both from this community, and now we're raising our family in this community. So we talk about community with our kids too, and get them to try to pitch in and give back. And that's, I don't know, it's kind of a core of a lot of what we do and who we are as a family and as individuals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that a lot. Not from other people, just in the way both of you speak, like your love for the community and your wanting to show up and be there, and that you give it your best and your all. So thank you for what you do for our community.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up here, I would love if you want to share anything. We have families of frontline workers and first responders listening to this podcast. What message do you have, or what do you want to share with them?
Primarily like the fire side, and the police, but I have the biggest connection to the fire side is I've seen it too many times now that like suicide, guys taking their lives for no reason, and we don't know why they took their lives. They have put in such a network of ways to help you to not make that the only option, and to just ask for help. As much as it's embarrassing or the last thing you would want to do, nobody's going to judge you. We would rather you ask for help than to do the other side, because it's, unfortunately, it is such a selfish thing to do, because it affects and hurts so many other people. And it's just, there's so many options out there.
Thank you. Jen, how about you?
Maybe ever the optimist, or at least I try, because you've been to the other side too, is it always gets better. There's a lot of cycles and stages you go through with a family, with the jobs that we have, and you just have to keep working until you find something that works for you. Just because what we say works for us today doesn't mean it's going to work for somebody else, but you just have to keep working to find what will work for your family, because there really are a lot of different ways to do it and make it work well.
What resources have you all found most supportive or helpful?
I think the biggest resource is your spouse. I mean, especially if you're on the front lines, they're gonna they need to know that there's, even if you're a single provider, like just a fireman or a policeman or a dispatcher or a doctor, or even your spouse needs to know that they need to try to help be there and try to understand. So maybe education on their part to understand what your job really entails would allow you to have an outlet, because they're, at the end of the day, you say you have friends, but at the end of the day, you only have your family. Like those will be the only people that are going to be there for you at the end of the day, and that's proven time and time again. You might have friends that'll come and they are part of your family, but at the end of the day, you only have your family. So the spouse is like trying to build that relationship with your spouse to have that internal support structure. I think is probably the most important thing I would start with, and then reaching out to all the other resources out there, the fire departments and everything. We don't post them all the time, and we don't focus on them all the time. It is more of a focus now, but there's so many resources out there to help, if you need it with anything.
I know the hospital, and I think that a lot of the first responder agencies have debriefing protocols and specialists available, and a lot of the times it needs to come from upper management to initiate it, but our nurses know that they can ask for a debriefing and for a specialist to come in after any given case. And I know that the first responders have specialists available for debriefing, even if it's to do as a group. What did we just see? What did we go through? How did we do well? How could we do better? Now, what are we going to do and how are we going to process this? But don't be afraid to be the person to ask questions or ask for help going through something, or to go over something, or to better prepare for the next time.
I think that's so good. That's another theme that's come up, and I'm just kind of like, I'm enjoying each one of these, but and noticing the commonalities. So when I'm tying the themes together, it's exciting to me to see how connected this these experiences are. And I think that theme of reaching out for help and normalize reaching out for help. And I love the way you said it, Jed, is we do see more death by suicide and a lot of those rates. And I would imagine the pressure of being like a representative of the community and some of those things you talked about makes it hard to reach out. But I just love the way both of you put that, is it's okay to reach out. It's okay to ask for help. And that communication, that you all talked about in your own relationship of schedule, but also feelings and emotions and all that stuff is so important. And so thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us and your stories, and really value. Thank you for what you do, obviously, but thank you for being here today, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks
for having us. Thank you for having us. Good luck with everything.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Have a good day.
Yeah, you guys too.
Thank you for listening to CASAT Conversations. We value and appreciate your time. Please share with us any comments, feedback, and ideas you have for future episodes. Please email us at learning@casat.org. Please visit our webpage for additional information, show notes, and relevant topics at casatondemand.org/CASAT Conversations. This podcast has been brought to you by the CASAT Podcast Network, located within the Center for the Application of Substance Abuse Technologies at the University of Nevada, Reno. For more podcasts, information, and resources, visit casat.org.